Hello everyone, today is 31st of October, now it's 10 past 11 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I'll share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. And there are a few very significant developments and news I'd like to share with you for this moment. Before I start, let me make a little announcement about changes in schedule. Many members of our community probably noticed that yesterday's second update that initially was published on Patreon now available on my YouTube and Rumble channels. Also, earlier this week, I asked members of our Patreon and Boosty community opinion if I will start publishing second updates next day on YouTube and Rumble, and feedback was positive. So, at least for time being, as an experiment, I will do so. I will publish second updates on early hours of the next day on my Patreon and Boosty pages. And for example, yesterday's second update initially was published on Patreon, as I already said, and Patreon members had early access. And this morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, video appeared on YouTube and Rumble, and it already has like 1,200 views. Hopefully, more members of our bigger community will be interested in this additional videos that are usually walk and talk type, because I'm trying to make the second updates for a Patreon and Boosty on streets of Moscow or from the streets of Moscow, and I hope this additional um, additional program will help to generate more interest, not just towards my YouTube and Rumble channels, but also towards my Patreon and Boosty pages, because of to have early access, obviously you have to be a Patreon of this project or subscriber on Patreon and Boosty. Also, dear friends, when it comes to Patreon and Boosty pages, even if I will continue publishing next day the second updates that are still relevant, by the way, news-wise, I will have enough exclusive content on Patreon and Boosty. For example, behind the scenes videos will stay on Patreon and Boosty. Also, me and my daughter, who went to university this year on Faculty of Journalism, are working on several projects that will be published, will be available on Patreon and Boosty. For example, I want program architecture of Moscow to be led by my daughter. It will be a good experience for her, and hopefully she will make at least one episode of this program a week. And also, we are working on idea to create a talk show on major topics at least once or twice a week, and this program will also be available on Patreon and Boosty. Hopefully from next week this additional programming will be available on these platforms. So as I said, there are plenty of exclusive gonna be on Patreon and Boosty. Even if I will publish second updates next day, early hours of the next day on YouTube and Rumble, and well, I hope it will work. I hope uh, this will work. Okay, that said, dear friends, that's been said. Let's talk about news now. Uh, I forget if I had any more announcements or not. Okay, some other day, maybe. And well, first of all, let's start with a short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. As you know, dear friends, last several days, Russian armed forces achieved significant progress on South Donetsk sector after a little pause, which followed the liberation of the Ugledar. And well, it is well known now that Russian armed forces established full control over their Bogoyavlenka, Novoukrayinka, Shakhterska, and Yasnaya Polyana settlements. Some more territories in between these settlements are under full Russian control now, and their progress continues. Even Kyiv regime's officials are basically forced to acknowledge that Kyiv regime's defense lines on South Donetsk sector are collapsing. Russian troops improved their position significantly in Kurachovo area, major logistical hub for southern sectors of the front line that Kyiv regime is using. And according to latest reports, Russian troops established control over about 50% of Kurachovo. Maybe for this moment, Russian progress is much more in Kurachovo settlement. But in any case, the situation is developing very rapidly, and maybe before end of this week, Kurachovo will become under full Russian control. Also, yesterday, as I reported in my second update, reports were coming in that Kyiv regime's forces left from major streets, main streets of Kurachovo, and withdraw towards westwards of this town. And as I said, Kyiv regime is unable to stabilize front line, and most likely before end of this week, Kurachovo will be under full Russian control. Also, reports are coming in about significant progress of the Russian armed forces on southern flank of Pokrovsk sector. According to latest reports, this settlement, Novoselidovka, is under full Russian control, although some channels are disputing this report and are saying that this settlement is still disputed between their sides. In any case, as you can see on the screen, dear friends, all this territory that is colored in a gray area is under operational control of the Russian armed forces. Now, there are reports that significant number of Kyiv regime troops are encircled in Kurachovka settlement. Don't mistake this town with Kurachovo. They have similar names, but somewhat different. One is Kurachovo, one is Kurachovka. And according to some reports, Russian troops established full control over the Kurachovka, also on the coal mine and the Terikon and all the rest of the territory in this area. According to another reports, Kyiv regime's forces still are maintaining some positions in this area, but in any case, operational control is clearly in Russian hands. And when it comes to other sectors of the front line, Russian troops are little by little improving positions on daily basis. And dear friends, yesterday I reported about progress of the Russian armed forces on southern flank of Berdyansk sector. This is Kruglyarkovka settlement that was liberated by Russian troops. And as you can see, if we zoom in on the bottom map, it is becoming obvious that Kyiv regime's forces on the left bank of the Oskol River were divided in two, left bank of the Oskol River and Zhiribets River also, which is in Terny, Yampolovka area, was divided into two parts. Most likely, we will see another Russian breakthrough in between Kruglyarkovka and Terny, somewhere here. And the Russian armed forces will neutralize Kyiv regime's grouping of forces, this divided grouping of forces, one by one. In any case, very significant developments were happening in Kruglyarkovka area because Kyiv regime will definitely struggle now to conduct supply and support operations of its troops on the left bank of Oskol River. And I guess it's only a matter of weeks, and we will see battles begin for Kupiansk city itself. When it comes to Kursk salient area, this territory that temporarily is occupied by Kyiv regimes or invading forces and NATO mercenaries is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking on daily basis. Earlier, I reported that at this point, Kyiv regime has units of some 16 brigades still in the Kursk salient area, but as the time goes by and this territory, Kyiv controlled territory is getting smaller and smaller, of course, concentration of the Kyiv regime's forces increasing on a square kilometer, let's say, and obviously it is becoming much easier for Russian long-range artillery, Russian Air Force to dealt huge damage to Kiev regime's grouping of forces in this area. And if in next couple of days Kiev will not withdraw troops from Kursk salient area, I guess we will see some totally chaotic withdrawal of unauthorized withdrawal of the Kiev regime's significant number of Kiev regime's troops from this area. They will just start running away as fast as they can because they would not be able to withstand the ever-increasing pressure of the Russian counter-terrorist operation in Kursk salient area. And this is it when it comes to short summary of the situation on Ukrainian battlefield. The initiative is in Russian hands, obviously, all along the front line, and Kiev regime has not even slight chance to regain initiative anywhere. If you are obviously many more developments are taking place on line of contact, and if you are looking for more detailed information on that, I recommend military channels. And if by chance you are not familiar with the military channels in alternative media, under this video in description box I have a list of channels that I follow, great channels by the way, and among them you will find links to military channels also. That's been said, dear friends, let's continue with some more news. And RIA Novosti is reporting about a massive drone strike on Berdyansk port that Kiev regime conducted early hours of this morning. Majority of drones were intercepted, but unfortunately not all of them, as far as I understand, because governor of the region, Evgeny Balitsky, stated that at least 3 people were injured as a result of these strikes of the Kiev regime, and of course they are receiving all necessary medical assistance. I guess there will be updates on this attack on Berdyansk, and during the day I will share additional information on my Telegram channel and in the next updates. And if you are interested, dear friends, where Berdyansk is located, it's on Azov Sea. This is Azov Sea here, and this is Berdyansk, part of Zaporizhzhia region. This is Berdyansk, by the way, and this is the port area that was targeted by Kiev regime's forces. Let's continue with some more news, and the TASS news agency is reporting that due to drone threats, aerial threats, airport in Saratov introduced some emergency measures, and no flights were received or launched from the airport. I will check right now if airport resume its work. No updates on that for this moment, although maybe for now airport resume its usual work, but at some point this morning local authorities have to shut down, have to take some security measures basically to make sure that passengers and staff is safe. And dear friends, yesterday in second update I spoke about news that initially was published in Financial Times, that there are some negotiations between Kiev and Moscow about stopping targeting, about ending of the targeting of energo facilities of each other by the sides. According to report, these negotiations were conducted with participation of Doha, if I remember correctly, Qatar, and well, Peskov, press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, was asked about this information from Financial Times, and he said that this is a fake news, this is a fake news, not true. And I guess we have at least indirect confirmation of words of Peskov, because we have this report from Vzгляд News paper that as a result of Russian long-range precise strikes on military and logistics infrastructure, including energy infrastructure of the Kiev regime in Kharkov region, Kharkov and their surrounding areas were experiencing blackouts during the previous 12 to 24 hours. I guess, yes, this is clearly can be seen as a confirmation that no negotiations, or at least no agreement between Moscow and Kiev is in place now about avoiding targeting of energo facilities. Although, dear friends, I would not be surprised at all if Russia will stop targeting energy facilities of Kyiv regime for the time being, even without any agreements being in place, because, as it was said many, many times, Russia is not fighting against citizens of Ukraine, against her society in this former Soviet republic. Russia is fighting against the Western-controlled Nazi and the fascist and the terrorist regime in Kiev, right? And it needs to be noticed that it's a collective West, it's a Western ruling class that is waging this proxy war against Russia. So therefore, to make sure that during the winter time, citizens of this former Soviet republic will not experience additional difficulties due to absence of energy, electricity, and so on, maybe Russia will decrease on its own strikes on energo facilities that are still controlled by Kyiv regime. That might happen as a gesture of the goodwill from Russian side. Let's continue, and we have this interesting report from TASS news agency that, well, according to head of Russia's Chechen Autonomous Republic, Ramzan Kadyrov, a recent strike on a building of general staff of Kyiv regime was a retaliatory step from Russian side for attacks, for a drone attack on Academy of Special Forces in Gudermes city in Chechnya. And during that strike, by the way, that happened day before yesterday, uh, during that strike, according to reports that I see, 10 Ukrainian POWs were killed. None of their local staff, none of the Russian military personnel, but 10 Ukrainian POWs were hurt, killed. Because obviously I cannot confirm or deny these reports that I read in Russian segment of internet. But what is interesting that Ramzan Kadyrov said that strike on building of general staff of the Kyiv regime in Kiev was a retaliatory measure for that attack, that Ukrainian attack in Gudermes. And I spoke about this attack on general staff's building in Kiev yesterday in second update, and you know, I shared my opinion. I was a bit surprised to see the news about this attack because, if I remember correctly, last time Moscow targeted decision-making center in Kiev was when missiles hit building of the main intelligence directorate of the defense ministry of the Kiev regime, right? After which a rumor started circulating, if you remember, head of main intelligence director, Kirill Budanov, was killed. Which was just rumors because that terrorist, Kirill Budanov, and he is designated as a terrorist by Russian law enforcement agencies, by the way, that terrorist is still, formally at least, head of main intelligence directorate of the Kiev regime. So therefore, when I read this report that General Staff's building was attacked, I was a bit surprised. Maybe some changes are about to happen in Russian strategy or Russian approach when it comes to these decision-making centers that are located in Kiev. Or maybe this was just one-time strike as a warning that if you continue this way, then your decision centers in Kiev will be targeted also. Maybe that was just a warning shot, let's say. I don't know, time will tell. RIA Novosti is also reporting, dear friends, that Zelensky went till full hysteria mode yesterday. That was while speaking to journalists from Northern European media outlets, as far as I understand. I shared video on my Telegram channel about it. And you can see, dear friends, in that short video, that Zelensky really was hysterical, quite hysterical. He was basically accusing White House of sharing classified information with the media. He was not happy that information about this secret parts of his ridiculous victory plan somehow become public knowledge, and media outlets start writing about Tomahawk missiles and some other stuff. He was not happy with White House and said that well, it seems like there are no confidentiality between the Kiev and Washington because only White House was informed about it, according to him. And well, maybe it is time for Zelensky and his criminal associates to realize that they are just appointed puppets of very same Washington, and they are not in position to tell what and how to do to nobody, especially to his Western masters. I don't know, maybe some poor quality powder was given to him, and as a result, he went through this crazy mode while criticizing his Western masters. I don't know what happened there, but uh, probably Western ruling class, Western Secret Services will put him in his place in relatively short time, and there will be no more hysterias from him, or at least for time being, because that video was something, by the way. You know, he's just a mediocre actor who was appointed as a president of this former Soviet republic to act, and I think he will be remembered that you know Washington and London and other major capital among NATO member states not gonna take lightly this criticism from this nobody, by the way, Zelensky, this mass murderer, terrorist, and um, RIA Novosti is reporting that well, State Department of US basically open up about some difficulties inside their NATO member states when it comes to Zelensky's so-called victory plan. And let's try this news for a little more insight. So Vladimir Zelensky's victory plan has raised concerns among US allies, and discussions on its provisions are continuing. US State Department spokesman Matthew Miller said on Wednesday, I don't think these circumstances are complicating their overall situation, but it definitely causes concern for a number of our NATO allies. We have heard this directly in our conversations with our allies, Miller said at the briefing. And well, I can understand why not all NATO member states are happy with this so called victory plan because one first point in that plan was Ukraine, this former Soviet republic, to become a NATO member state, which will mean that fifth article may be misused and the NATO member states may end up in direct war with Russia, and no one wants this, right? No one, or at least no adequate people, not just among Western elites or Western ruling class, but no adequate people worldwide among us ordinary people, among political class, or anybody wants full-scale war between NATO and Russia, right? So I can absolutely understand why a number of NATO member states don't even want to consider Kiev regime is joining NATO. It's just not happening. Nothing to be said about other demands of Kiev regime about this Tomahawk, the long-range cruise missiles, and some other stuff that they want, right? And Washington is quite open about it. Washington is quite open about it, and they are signaling basically that this victory plan is a non-starter, and they are trying to downgrade the importance of the topic in general. That's how I read, anyways, this picture. Also, dear friends, interesting news is coming from Hungary. According to RIA Novosti, local counterintelligence services find out that there are certain groups from NATO, secret services of NATO member state, number of NATO member states, and there are also secret services of non-NATO member states. I guess Kiev-controlled territory or Kiev regime secret services were planning uh, to somehow organize transfer of the weapons that are produced by Hungary's military industrial complex to Ukraine, to Kiev regime. Let's translate this news also. And this attempt was stopped, by the way, by Hungary's secret services, which is obviously great news, undoubtedly. And well, let's go through this news in little more detail. So, Hungarian counterintelligence managed to stop attempts by foreign special services to arrange deliveries of the weapons made in the Republic to Ukraine. Head of the Prime Minister's administration, Georgi Givas, said at the government briefing broadcasted by M1 TV channel, their Magyar Memzet newspaper, same time asked him to comment on reports that foreign intelligence agencies, both in NATO and outside of the bloc, tried to arrange supply of the weapons and the military equipment from factories in Hungary to war zones in Africa and Ukraine. And this is the answer, by the way. There was indeed attempt to use the capability of Hungarian military industry to send weapons to Ukraine, but the Hungarian counterintelligence discovered this and was able to stop it. I can only say that position of Hungarian government remains unchanged. We will not supply weapons and military equipment to Ukraine. Gias stated, a representative of the Prime Minister of Hungary. So interesting news, and it is good that Hungary's counterintelligence discovered this scheme and they were able to stop this whole operation because if obviously if Hungarian weapons end up in hands of Kiev regime, that will have some influence, obviously negative implications on relationships between Budapest and Moscow, and I don't think any of the capitals wants that, right? And Hungary's leadership stated many times that they are for peace. They don't seek any further escalation of this proxy war that NATO or collective West is waging against Russia. They are they are all about peace and de-escalation. RT is reporting that well, the world now has three superpowers, according to top US general. Quite interesting news, dear friends. I shared this information on my Telegram also this morning. But let's go through it now also. So the unipolar era, when the US was the only dominant superpower, has given way to a multipolar world. Retired US General Mark Milley admitted on Tuesday at the meeting of the American Bankers Association in New York. The former Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman, who served under both President Donald Trump and Joe Biden, said that there were now three superpowers in the world: the US, Russia, and China. During the Cold War, there were two superpowers. Immediately following the Cold War, there was a unipolar moment so far. So for a short time, the US clearly was a permanent and the only real superpower out there, according to Milley. But today it is clear that we are in a multipolar world, Milley said. He also stated that US leaders should pay especially close attention to Beijing, given China's rate of growth and ambitions to develop military. They are probably the one country who has the legs and the distance that could literally challenge the US position in a global scale. The retired general said. Milley added that Russia also remains an acute threat, given that it has a lot of nuclear weapons and is engaged in their biggest ground war in Europe since 1945. Well, interesting statements, isn't it? From one of the top US militaries. He just retired a couple of months ago, isn't it? Relatively recently. And well, let's go through some points here. First of all, it is interesting that he was giving this speech before American Bankers Association in New York, and I find it interesting because I guess Milley was trying to say to their most powerful financial groups in US and possibly in this world to take in account that if they had any ambitions that somehow through their proxies they're gonna they're gonna be able to somehow establish control over their resources, including natural resources of Ukraine or Russia or a number of other countries in this world, well, they're not going to be able to do so. Probably that was one message for this group of influential, people, and the explanation was also given that the time when U.S. was only superpower is gone, and U.S. is being challenged now, and therefore those immensely influential financial groups, quite often multinational financial groups that are pulling the strings, not going to be able to impose their will on the countries worldwide as easy as it was done like 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago after the collapse of Soviet Union, right? And we all know, dear friends, how big interests of the Western, these financial industrial groups are and were in terms of Ukraine, for example. They are dreaming about establishing control over Russia to rob Russia, obviously, which is not going to happen. But just take a look at the Ukraine, by the way, and companies that one way or another were involved in all this Ukrainian story. You all hear about Burisma, isn't it? This Ukrainian company. Do you know which Western companies had their interest in this formerly Ukrainian energo companies? It's all Western ones, by the way, all US, mainly US companies, right? It's US interest. I mean, we all hear about BlackRock, isn't it? How involved BlackRock was when it comes to buying up just about everything in this former Soviet Republic, right? And they are already losing big. They are already losing big, right? And Mille is basically giving them a warning that if you will continue to invest in some dodgy projects in certain directions, you're going to lose even more because this is no longer a unipolar world. This is multipolar world. And there are some other forces in this world that are going to stop you, right? And you're not going to be able to use and abuse US as your tool to achieve your goals no longer, at least not as easy as it was done before. So that's an interesting situation there, right? And acknowledgement that world has changed. And when it comes to topic of superpowers, yes, obviously, Russia right now has most capable ground forces, most capable military, basically, especially ground forces in this world. I mean, no questions about that, right? Most experienced, battle-hardened ground forces that probably ever existed, right? That's Russian troops. US is also obviously major superpower, not just because of the nukes that Russia has. Russia has most nukes in this world, right? More than any other country. But US is on second place when it comes to nukes. But it's not just because of that, but because of the US Navy, which is losing its power because many vessels in U.S. Navy are just too old or outdated and so on. But still, U.S. fleet, especially aircraft carrier fleet, is a force to be reckoned with, isn't it? And China obviously is also a superpower, not just because of the nukes, but also because of their economical power. China is an economic powerhouse, industrial powerhouse, um, one of the richest countries in this world, and China is spending big to develop its militaries, right? And obviously China is a superpower, no questions. But I will add India also. Maybe India right now are not in the same league, but India is emerging powerhouse, and give it another 15, 20, 30 years, and India will reach a point when hardly anyone will doubt that India is their major global superpower. And me personally, I see India as such right now. because it is. India is a superpower, and whenever there are talks about superpowers in this world, I think India has to be mentioned always, also. But in any case, quite interesting that I mean, top U.S. military is acknowledging that U.S. is no longer single dominant force in this world, and there are financial uh, groups or industrial groups and so on that were pulling the strings and using US as its tool due to immense corruption in US and this dodgy system that is implemented there. Um, well, they're not going to be able to continue same way uh, any longer. And this is a good message for US citizens also, because if they will think about all this situation, they will realize that, first of all, what the hell, man, this guy was a top US military just recently, and now he's given, I don't know, tens of thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars for giving speeches here and there. Okay, that's a traditional way to enrich themselves in US for officials, former officials. But question is why? Why these former high-ranking officials are constantly becoming CEOs here and there and given hundreds of thousands of dollars for some speeches? Maybe this is the way of corruption is work there, because when they are on a position of power, maybe they are making some favorable decisions to certain groups that are pulling the strings. For example, U.S. bankers. Maybe it's clearly. I mean, it's clearly corruption uh, there, and hardly anyone will argue on that, right? So, if U.S. citizens want to really regain control over their country, well, maybe they have to start demanding changes in the system so that money will not play this crucial role when it comes to elections and when it comes to whom and when and what position and on what position will be elected or appointed, right? But that's a whole different story. Let's continue with the news. And dear friends, let me remind you, if I may, that this small media project of mine is completely subscriber funded, as many of you know, and fully depends on your assistance and support. And if you like my work, if you like to see further development of this project, please consider to support my work with small donations through PayPal platform or Boosty platform. Since I don't have a Buy Me Coffee because I was cancelled there due to my Russian citizenship. Yeah. Or you can subscribe on my page on Patreon. This is my Patreon page, by the way. That's how it looks. So, and obviously I have a lot of hundreds of videos, by the way, on my Patreon. Not just news updates, but also videos about life in Russia, about different topics. And as I said, I'll have more exclusive content for Patreon and a Boosty community in near future. So yes, I mean you can, if you want, or you can support through donations, with donations through PayPal or Boosty platform, or by subscribing to my Patreon. As you, if you can see, dear friends, on your screen right now, uh, our community on Patreon is only 170, and I really hope to reach. I was hoping to reach 200 before end of summer, but unfortunately, this did not happen. Maybe with your help, we will reach 200 before end of this year, at least. And if so, this project will be in much more safer place in that case. So links are on this video, dear friends, in description box and in the pinned comment. And on my part, I will try my best to be independent, always be real, as I am always, by the way, maybe too real and too emotional time to time. But I will try my best to provide you with interesting uh, news updates, interesting content in general. So yes, all the links on this video in description box and in the pinned comment. That being said, let's continue with some more news. And TASS News Agency is reporting that more than 830,000 Lebanese have been forced to flee from their homes due to military confrontation between Israeli Defense Force and Lebanese Hezbollah. And unfortunately, this number of refugees will only continue to increase and will reach million and possibly millions in fairly short time if there will be no de-escalation between Israel and Lebanon. And for now, at least, unfortunately, de-escalation is not even in sight, and not even on horizon, because let's be real, only major capital in this world that really can influence the situation in short time is Washington, right? Because Washington has close relationships, close ties with the Israeli leadership than the capital, right? And unfortunately, Washington does nothing. And their only statements are made here and there, time to time. But when it comes to real steps, real policies, Washington is doing nothing to stop this escalation in the region. And therefore, as I said, peace is not even in on horizon at this point, and I'm afraid situation will only escalate further, and region will be under more and more risk of entire Middle East will be under more and more risk of the regional war, and that's exactly what Western ruling class wants, in my personal opinion. They want regional war. They want navigation to be shut down in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait, so that China will no longer have access to energy of the Middle East. Hopefully, Western ruling class will not be able to, you know, prevail, but only time will tell. RT is also reporting that North Korea conducts longest ever ICBM test. So North Korea has a test fired their intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM in a warning to its regional adversaries, according to the state-run KCNA news agency. In a statement on Thursday, spokesman for the Defense Ministry of Pyongyang described the test as crucial, adding that it was ordered by North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Their missile launcher updated the recent record of their strategic missile capabilities of DPRK and demonstrated their modernity and the credibility of its world's most powerful strategic deterrent. The spokesman added North Korea officials did not specify the type of ICBM or provide any technical details. And according to information, the projectile remained airborne for 87 minutes and reached altitude of 7,000 kilometers. This was reported by Japanese and South Korean officials. So, well, I guess this launch of ICBM from North Korea was a kind of answer on recent statement of Chief of Pentagon Lloyd Austin, who said that U.S. is ready to back South Korea with the nuclear weapons. The U.S. is ready to support South Korea with both its nuclear and non-nuclear military capabilities, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin stated on Wednesday. The statement came as tensions on the Korean Peninsula are on the rise, and just before North Korea tested an intercontinental ballistic missile on Thursday. And none of us are surprised, obviously, to hear that from Lloyd Austin statements about nuclear weapons, and none of us gonna uh, like start this campaign that Pentagon is using nuclear blackmail and that kind of stuff, and that's exactly what is happening in the West, in the collective West. Whenever some high-ranking Russian officials are asked by journalists about nuclear weapons, nuclear strategy, nuclear doctrine, and so on. Whenever high-ranking Russian officials even mention nuclear weapons, there is a hysteria in the Western propaganda, isn't it? And among Western ruling elites, that Russia is, using nuclear blackmail and this and that. When we have now this situation, and Russia is, by the way, right now, the Western collective West is waging proxy war against Russia, right? So Russia is a very different situation than South Korea is, for example, isn't it? Or the Korean Peninsula in general. But despite that, for whatever reason, chief of Pentagon found it necessary to start talking about nuclear weapons, that they will use nukes and also non-nukes and this and that, if necessary. And I don't think Western media and the very same Western so-called politicians gonna start now hysteria about why Lloyd Austin said this and Lloyd Austin is using nuclear blackmail and that kind of stuff. It's not gonna happen, isn't it? And this is not even double standards, by the way. This is, I don't know what this is, man. This is just demonstrates how fake Western ruling class really is in its entirety, isn't it? There are some exceptions, obviously, some exceptions, but in general, they are just a fake, by the way. Vast majority of them, isn't it? Anyways, let's continue. We have this news, dear friends, that Seoul, capital of South Korea, examined the situation with, on peninsula when it comes to relationships between North and South, examined this topic of North Korean troops in Russia and come up with a statement. Defense Minister of South Korea, Kim En-hen, basically come up with statements that even if North Korean troops are in Russia, that would not provoke war on the peninsula, which is, well, I find it difficult to understand what the hell is going on in this collective West when the defense minister of a country forced to clarify some very simplistic stuff. He is forced to say, you know what? If North Korean troops are in Russia, then okay. I mean, North Korean troops are in Russia. But that did not going to provoke war on peninsula because where you see connection here. I mean, what the hell? Of course, it's not going to provoke war on the Korean peninsula, right? And the situation with these North Korean troops, I mean, this propaganda went so wild now that even on the level of defense ministers, some statements have to make some simplistic statements to kind of calm things down. That, you know what, just chill, everybody. There's gonna be no war in Korean Peninsula, and no one really cares about. At least seems like in South Korea, or in many countries, by the way, if North Korean troops are in Russia and are undergoing some training and they're gaining some experience in modern warfare and so on. Okay, it's just stuff that happens quite often between their countries that have good relationships. They share experience, knowledge, and so on. So at this point, I'm really losing understanding why Western ruling class, Western propaganda even started this hysteria around North Korean troops, man. I just don't get it. As I said before, if it was a million people, but if North Korea sent million soldiers to participate, to help Russia, to, deal with its enemies, oh, million troops, that's quite formidable force. 500,000, okay, formidable force. 300,000 force, okay, I mean, that's big also, but initially there was statements about 1,500, then 3,000, then 15,000, then 12,000. Now Pentagon is talking about some 10,000. I mean, at least Western ruling class should for themselves come up with some similar story, because every other day they are changing this story and they are making from themselves laughing stock, isn't it? Russia does not need no North Korean troops to deal with its enemies, and that's it. That's about it, isn't it? And when it comes to training of their armed forces of their friendly nations, then okay, why not? Right? Rianost is reporting, dear friends, that Slovakia become, this is quite interesting news, that Slovakia become a biggest importer of goods from Russia in August, right? And when I see this news, I was thinking, I mean, good for you, Slovakia. Good for you. You see opportunity, and of course, you're gonna use it. And let's go through this news. Slovakia in August, for the first time, become the main buyer of Russian goods among the EU countries. But Germany overall remains the largest trading partner, according to calculations by the RIA Novosti, uh, based on Eurostat. So Slovakia, at the end of the summer, increased purchases of products from Russia by 2.1 times, up to 320.9 million euros, for the first time becoming the main importer among the EU countries. So it is good, by the way. I guess Hungary is also somewhere there because obviously businesses in Slovakia and Hungary, they see opportunity, isn't it? Due to crazy policies of their other EU member states, businesses in that other EU member states are experiencing difficulties to do business with Russian partners, with Russian businesses. But Slovakian leadership or Hungarian leadership, or they are not coming up with some artificial barriers. Or they are doing exactly opposite, encouraging cooperation between the people, between the businesses, and therefore, obviously, Slovakian businesses opportunity to buy some stuff uh, that can be sold in Slovakia and also re-exported in EU, right? And that's what they do. And hopefully they are making good money on that, you know. Just in 1 month, 300 million, okay, it may not be billions and billions, but for small or medium businesses, by the way, if they will make every other month 10, 20, 30, 100 million or 300 million by doing business with Russia, it's good, you know, it's big stuff, important stuff. So well done to Slovakia, by the way, well done to all the countries in this world that are continuing to cooperate with Russia, despite all the attempts of the Western ruling class to uh, destroy these relationships. And dear friends, interesting article in Le Monde, according to our team, tightening Russian oil sanctions threatens global economy, according to this French media outlet. So attempt to further tighten Western sanctions on Russian oil could undermine the global economy. French newspaper Le Monde wrote on Wednesday. The report indicates that tightening sanctions on the Russian major oil producing uh, countries could send their fertilizer prices soaring and would ultimately lead to high global food prices. And there is connection there, isn't it? The fertilizers usually are made from gas, natural gas, and Western ruling class is trying hard, isn't it, to somehow cut off at least Western world from Russian gas. They managed to achieve some success in this regard, although European states are still buying Russian gas, uh, pipeline gas, and also LNG, because there are not that many places in this world from where you can actually buy gas, right? Anyway, so yes, if prices on gas increases or if there is any shortages of gas on market, obviously it will increase prices on fertilizers also, which will influence ultimately food production, agricultural sector, and their prices on food will skyrocket. In the rise of oil prices, the rise of oil prices would disproportionately affect poorest countries, potentially pushing them into humanitarian crisis. U.S. Economist Catherine Wolfram was quoted as saying, such a scenario could discredit the West in the eyes of global South and encourage them to strengthen ties with Russia. She suggested, and she has a point, although I will argue with her that well, Western ruling class probably will find it difficult to any further discredit um, Western world. I mean, Uh, U.S. is committing terrorist attacks left and right. U.S. Just recently conducted the largest scale industrial terrorist attack ever by attacking Nord Stream pipelines. Uh, Western financial and banking institutions are weaponized so much so by Western ruling class that they are now stealing Russian assets, right? So what else they gonna do, by the way, to discredit themselves? I mean, I don't know. So I don't think anybody in this world has any illusions anymore, right? Everybody knows that Western ruling elites, Western ruling class, in its majority, is absolutely despicable uh, individuals and cannot and should not be trusted, right? Everyone knows that. But when it comes to other points here, obviously, if the Western ruling class will continue with its policies of disruption of the world markets, including energy markets, of course, they're going to cause some trouble in this world. Question is, do they care about it? Whenever I'm saying, my take on uh, interests of the Western ruling class when it comes to Middle East, for example, I'm quite sure they want to provoke regional war to cut China from Middle Eastern energy sources. I mean, they want navigation to shut down in the Persian Gulf and through Hormuz Strait, right? And I can see logic behind the argument that I see in the comment sections quite often from members of our community that in that case, well, entire world will suffer, world prices will, prices all around the world will skyrocket, and inflation will go crazy, and the U.S. In the Western states also, obviously, and therefore Western ruling class will not risk it. But dear friends, do you really think that Western ruling class cares about uh, living conditions of its fellow citizens? Do you really think so? I mean, they demonstrated that they have no care about ordinary people when they shut down almost entire world economy just a couple of years ago, right? And tens of thousands of businesses, for no reason at all, by the way, other than issues that are barriers that was created intentionally by regimes worldwide, went out of business. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people lost their jobs, right? And I'm saying for no reason because we have example of Sweden, by the way. Sweden did not shut down nothing, by the way, right? Sweden did not do all that crazy stuff that we see in US, in Canada, in some other countries worldwide, and come out better from that situation compared to others. So we can, compare, right? So Western ruling class already demonstrated, by the way, that they have no care about ordinary people, their fellow citizens or non-citizens. They just don't care. All they care is their own influence, their own geopolitical agenda, and they see China as a threat, and they want to harm China. That's it. China is like a red banner for a bulls or something. You know, they see China and they are going crazy. They want to do something to China, right? They hate Russia, obviously, but they are afraid of China. And that's why I think Western ruling class will try its best to provoke regional war, and they are trying, by the way. I mean, many people may not realize in this world that never before Iran and Israel was this directly or targeting each other. Now they do. Never in history they were attacking each other this directly. Now they do. How dangerous is that for this region or for the world? It is dangerous, isn't it? And who is pushing this situation? Western ruling class, isn't it? Because if they wanted to see the escalation in the region, they will do it already. But they didn't. Question is why, right? But anyways, dear friends, let's continue. A few more news. RT is reporting that productivity is declining in most of the EU, according to International Monetary Fund. And well, if this Western financial institution, this institution that is 100% controlled by Western ruling class, is saying that EU economies are experiencing difficulties, then real situation is probably 10 times worse, right? Because if they are forced to acknowledge that there are some issues there, probably real situation is much worse than officials are saying. The EU economy is not growing as fast as it could be, and the productivity is a problem in every member country, according to the International Monetary Fund. The director of the IMF's European department, Alfred Kammer, shared its regional economic outlook for the blocs earlier this week. Expected GDP growth rate in the EU is predicted by the to be only 1.1% this year and 1.6% in 2025, up from 0.6 a year earlier. Commenting on a report, Kammer pointed to three factors holding the EU back. First, Europe's markets are too fragmented to provide the needed scale for firms to grow. Second, Europe has no shortage of savings, but its capital markets fail to provide to boost young and productive firms. In addition, Europe is missing skilled labor where it is needed, he said. And okay, I can understand these 3 points, by the way, but this person didn't mention major one, which is energy, isn't it? Energy cost. In many cases, in majority of cases, when it comes to difficulties in EU economies, uh, if you dig in, you will find out that troubles are starting from the point when Western ruling class decided to start this sanctions war against Russia, proxy war against Russia, and when they start cutting ties with Russian businesses, Russian economies, when they force businesses in the West to cut ties with their Russian partners, right? And as a result, obviously, energy prices reached their high level, historically high levels, right? Highest levels. And Western businesses, many businesses in Europe, find out that it is difficult or almost impossible to compete now on the world market when you are no longer able to produce goods based on a relatively cheap energy that you were receiving from the Russia and before from Soviet Union, right? That's the main reason, in my personal opinion, of difficulties in European economies. This crazy ideologically driven uh, policies of the Western ruling class, Western elites towards Russia, and that's the result. Even IMF is forced to recognize that yes, productivity is declining in most EU countries. For God's sake, man, it's not just simple decline. Major companies are shutting down their plants, right? And thousands and thousands of people are losing their jobs because of it. It's not just some simple slight decline. It's a deindustrialization that is happening. And dear friends, I will end there. I will end. And who is to blame, by the way? Western ruling elites. They should blame themselves, right? And if citizens of EU member states have some questions, then they should ask these questions to their own politicians, right? To their own so-called elites. And dear friends, I will end this update on this quite interesting news that, uh, founder of the TikTok has become China's richest man with their estimated wealth of 49 billion US dollars. So yes, well done to him. Well done to him. He replaced her on the first position, head of Chinese company under the name of Nunfu, um, Chun Shanshine. And this Nunfu company is a water producer company. But now this person, Chang Yimin, is a Chinese richest man. He is a founder of TikTok and well, quite interesting. Quite interesting. Tech giant, CEO of the tech or founder of the tech giant is becoming richest man in China also, as they are in US, right? Although difference is huge. If in US richest persons are playing with their hundreds of billions, in China it's just tens of billions for now. Uh, but anyways, man, I mean, what they gonna do with this money, man? Why you ever need 49 10 man? Anyways, who cares? Who cares? But it is interesting to know that founder of TikTok is the richest person in China now. And in the world, if I remember correctly, richest person in this world is Elon Musk, isn't it? With some 300 plus billion, something like that. Bezos is second, I guess. Anyways, I will end this update now, dear friends. Hopefully, you will find it informative, interesting, and useful. And if so, please click that like button and leave some commentary just about anything. This is the only way we can at least try and influence algorithm to reach wider audience on both platforms, on YouTube and Rumble. As you know, my channel is not monetized on YouTube, but it is monetized on Rumble. So if you can watch my updates on Rumble, for example, that might be help also. And dear friends, if you have not seen uh, today's first video, which is yesterday's second update that I made for Patreon and Boosted, that video is available now on YouTube and Rumble, and it's quite okay video. Check that video also. It's a walk and talk type of video, as I usually do for Patreon and Boosty. And if you like this new format, dear friends, when initially early access to second updates are in hands of Patreon and Boosty community members, and the next day, early hours of the next day, video is published on YouTube and Rumble. If you find this format interesting and useful, then I will continue this way. Um, if not, then well, the second updates will stay only on a Patreon and will be exclusive for Patreon. In any case, if you like my work, if you want to support her, all the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. And please consider to join our community on Patreon, dear friends. It is really, really important for this project to survive. So please consider. This is it for now. Have a great day and take care.